Monday, everybody.
Yo!
Live
Happy Monday
Thing.
indeed.
Yeah. Which was the style at the time.
Oh my god, that was so good. So good.
Hey, everybody. We're going to start Weird Things here in just a few minutes. How's everybody doing on a Monday?
Good. Busy weekend.
Here we go. Yeah? Oh, yeah, it was. We had a couple shoots this weekend.
6 episodes.
Did we really
Gosh
do
darn.
six?
That's a lot of hooch.
It's a lot of eps. Hey man, I got a transient living on the property.
For a while.
Yeah. Maybe this is the kind of thing that I will learn to regret saying, but I definitely
Yeah.
spoke the words, "As long as you want, man," to one Andrew Heaton, who is my
Yeah.
my official creative in residence.
So he's living at the property now?
Yeah, he this morning I popped by and he was on a phone call. He's like, "Hold on, my crazy ass landlord just walked in," and then he told me, he was like, "Hey, he like, let me put you on mute," and he's like, "Hey, just want to let you know that somebody with some kind of professional uniform looked up. It looked like he had some tools or something." And so I shouted, "What are you doing? Get out of here! I have a gun!" And then another guy came up, and I was just and I said, I just shouted, "Eminent domain!"
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
I have a friend that was a park ranger in South Florida, and he's driving the truck around this place called Butterfly World. It's kind of a nice park, not too dense woods, but he's driving his truck around, and he sees like 2 homeless guys walking across the grass and go into the woods. He's like, they look like disc golfers, but maybe not disc golfers. So he gets out of his truck, walks through, finds his path, turns a corner, and there's like 20 guys living in a hobo village in the park. He's
Dude.
like, holy cow, you know.
Here
It was a secret homeless camp that had popped up, this far edge of the park there.
Here in Austin, they recently became one of the few major cities to officially declare that anyone can camp anywhere at any time and they can't be told to move. Which, you think, okay, well, let's see how this plays out. Here's how it's played out so far. That underpass where there's always been kind of a tent city, now there are solar panels there, and somebody has taken pallets and has literally built fences around their part. Like, they ain't messing around. They're all like, well, I guess I have me a home now.
That was the thing that happened around the lake right after the whole barbecue Becky thing went down. The Oakland police had very little desire to intervene in anything.
What was
related
Barbecue
to
Becky?
Lake. Barbecue Becky was this viral thing where a woman decided to call the cops on a black family because they were using charcoal barbecue in a propane only barbecue area. It became this viral video of her calling the cops and people following her while she was calling the cops. And this had 2 effects immediately on Lake Merritt in Oakland, where it happened, which is right around my apartment. Number 1, everybody realized that barbecuing by the lake is really cool, and so it became very popular afterward. And number 2, the cops could not be bothered to enforce literally anything because nobody wanted to be Officer Butthole in the next.
Nobody wanted a starring role in the next brouhaha.
Yeah, exactly. So the homelessness became like intense, and it really hit at a certain point a comical inflection point of a guy had a teepee with solar panels on top of the teepee. He had a deck made out of pallets, and it was right after Christmas, so we built hedges around his residence of old dead Christmas trees. And it was about then the city was like, okay, we're getting everybody out of here.
That's amazing. Hey, before we start, Justin, do you know what tomorrow is?
I do not know what tomorrow is.
Tomorrow is the last broadcast of Night Attack from this studio.
Bang the under, huh? So you guys are moving out this week.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Trey Warren just gave me his the mover. Trey Warren donated a bunch of old stuff because he's moving, That's where
Yeah.
that awesome coffee table came from. But he hired these movers that were just exceptional. It's like they moved quickly, but you could tell they were so practiced that like giant wooden stabby things would whoosh, just miss by this much every newly freshly painted corner in the whole thing. So we're gonna hire those guys to move everything down. There's a lot to move. It's pretty crazy.
Excited. This is the last Weird Things from
That's right.
from
Shoot,
the studio.
I didn't even think about it. Oh my gosh,
Hey, tomorrow will be tonight will be the last Cord Killers.
that's true.
from the studio.
That is true.
And I think we're doing Bizarre Briefing next week, so we'll also be breaking that in for the first time. In the season.
It's going to look like a bit of a disaster for a while, but
well,
but I think
we'll do
it'll
it
be good.
right.
Yeah.
Look, hey, we're good. We'll be
No,
good.
no, no, no. I mean, but I mean, we will appear in transition, is what I'm saying.
It's gonna be good. Yeah. And our friend Andrew Heaton will be on. Like you just mentioned, we got Jack Allison tomorrow on our final broadcast here. That'll be
Wow.
great. Just Jack Allison and nobody else.
Yeah. So forget any other previous tweets.
Oh wait. Did you
No,
claim
that
Kate was going to join
there,
us? Or?
well, there was a small scheduling snafu, and
Uh-huh.
some emails didn't get sent, and so Kate will be happy to be on another time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was
Man, we get to double dip this way. I like this.
yeah. We do not have a Jack AM curse on this show. We do not have-
All right, let's get into some weird things.
Let's do
All
some
right.
weird things. All right. You ready, Andrew?
I am ready.
All right. Take it away in 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to the Weird Things podcast. I'm Adrian Main, joined by Justin Robert Young,
Whoa, hi friends.
Brian Brushwood,
Oh my gosh, it's all happening. This is it. The final broadcast from this studio.
and Mr. Bryce Castillo, who hopefully Brian will be taking with him to the new studio.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully Bryce allows me to show up. I know if it moves, it'll be more a Bryce affair than a Brian affair.
No,
Hopefully-
just for those of you who are unaware, Brian's moving into his new compound with a brand new big studio. It's going to be awesome. But also, functionally, Brian lost control of that studio a few years ago. Bryce is the only, if Brian is left to his own devices, the first thing he does is calls Bryce to ask him to walk him step by step through how to work this thing. And now the studio is going to get torn down and rebuilt in Bryce's image. There is no studio without Bryce from here on out.
I mean, hopefully he has like we can have like an Arduino controller with a bunch of macros and stuff. Like we'll call it the Brian button, where it's like, I just want to be on Twitch, and I press the Brian button, and then everything turns on.
I'll make a little checklist sheet so you can boot up. We'll keep Wirecast on here for you.
Yes.
You already have the Brian button. It's called Bryce's number on your cell.
But yeah, I'm excited, and we're looking at some new audio setups. So hopefully, even next week's episode sounds even better. Fingers crossed. So,
Yeah,
there we go.
very
Keep-
excited.
Keep listening to weird things.
So, gentlemen, this is the week.
The week for what?
The week for Storm Area 51 that can't stop all of us.
I
God.
think I'd like to believe that that's why we're moving studios now, is to don't go now. They're all headed to Area 51.
I mean, all right. So where are we? Because we didn't talk about it because we were kind of we didn't know where on the scale of like funny to serious this laid. Now there's been further machinations of there was going to be a festival out there that the organizer of the initial Facebook group was a part of and then not a part of. I guess there is going to be some meetup in Las Vegas. But where are we? I'll ask you, Andrew, because I think you have the best conscience about this. Brian and I are just jackals who like laughing at things. Where are you on the scale of serious to funny of Storm Area 51?
Well, I mean, when he started, it was a funny thing. It was a funny, like, hey, let's all do. The original post was funny because it's like this, like, wouldn't it be fun? And then a lot of people are like, yeah, we want to know. And I think I like this headline from the Air Force Times. Storm Area 51 event canceled after everyone realizes it's a horrible idea. And since there's been attempts to sort of, I guess, create like alien stock and other stuff, and I guess the original guy who posted that, he's backed away from that, and now it's getting all messy and complicated because, you create something everybody's excited about, and you're like, what can we do with this? And so, officially it's canceled. People still show up. I'm sure people are going to show up, and then, we'll see what happens there.
Man,
Here, I'll read that headline.
Yeah, Storm Area 51 creator. I sparked a movement while I was bored at 2 a.m., which is just an amazing time capsule of our modern world.
so
He's from Bakersfield, which is not a lot to do there.
this is probably more of an After Things kind of idea, but I think I might have mentioned it on After Things. Like, as we move into a new facility, I drew the circle of story, arrow to attention, arrow to sales, arrow to story. And the idea being each one should serve the next one. Like, story should be written in service of attracting attention, which should be, conducted with the intention of whether it's, putting ads on it or making some kind of money so that you can fund better and better stories. But to me, it seemed intuitive that the circle could go one way, it should go one way. And I was like, well, why is it so obvious to me it should go one way? And I tried reversing it, and I realized you get an unsustainable sales funnel. This is kind of a perfect example of that, because it started with attention and then tried to go backwards into story, and you could see them casting about like, well, what's the story? Like, I don't know. We're going to do a music festival. Anyone? No. Because originally the story was we're going to actually try to storm a government institution, but we can't do that now that it's a giant thing on its own. And
So these are people who are not any of the original organizers. These are people trying to co-opt all of this energy.
Exactly. But regardless of who the people are, like, as an event, this is something that had a story that was untenable, and that went to attention. And now it's got so much attention that they're trying to go back to story. And it's like, sorry, bro, you can't tweak that story. Like, the story is one story. They can't stop us all.
So the way I understand it is some music organizers stepped in and contacted the initial guy who founded that page on Facebook, and they were going to do Alien Stock, as Andrew mentioned, which was going to be a music festival close to Area 51. The problem is, for anybody who's actually tried to go around that area, or even really driven from LA to Vegas, or driven through Nevada, like, this is not hospitable area. Like, to do anything out there even when they do those like Electric Daisy Carnival or whatever, these like big parties out there in Vegas, people are passing out, and it's hard to do. You need to do a lot of people who are like professionals at this have a hard time doing it. And so I guess that's why the initial Facebook founder stepped away from it, because he's like, hey, I can't have people like dying on my hands. That was the reason why he shut down the initial Facebook thing. So dragging them out into to the desert with a poorly planned concert, like, that could have real health problems.
Name one concert that had disastrous consequences and possibly criminal repercussions for people who tried to put it on and failed to execute it well.
I mean,
It's never happened, Brian.
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Also has two competing documentaries about it, one on Netflix, one on Hulu. Just name one.
And that's the thing, is he made a point to say, look, I can't have a fire, like, I can't be I can't be part of this, basically. So I am pulling it out, but we're definitely going to do something in Vegas, in downtown Vegas or whatever.
Look at their website. This is an official statement on the alienstockfestival.com. We foresee a possible humanitarian disaster in the works, and we can't participate in any capacity at this point. Wow.
I believe it. It's like, between the line, it's like, all y'all dummies are going to come in, and none of y'all are bringing bottled water. No. Everybody go gamble instead.
But not to mention that the Air Force was saying, like, yeah, we'll shoot them all. We have enough bullets. We'll shoot all of them. It doesn't matter. We can stop them all.
Naruto's very fast, not faster than a bullet.
Not faster than a bullet. Should a Superman run?
I would say that part of the success of the meme, at least, kind of comes back down to that here we are, almost 2020, and people still wonder, does the government have information about aliens? What aren't they telling us? And we're so fascinated by this idea. And it's one of the problems of the likely answer, I think, as far as we're concerned, is like, no, there's nothing there, isn't going to satisfy people who believe there is. And as long as the answer is no, there's nothing there, like, no, what's really going on?
Well, and of course, that's a question that will never be satisfactorily answered. No matter what the answer is, you could always ask it again. Yeah, but what's really going on?
Yeah. Well, that gets into, the whole trying to prove a negative.
Yeah.
Like my favorite story about Clinton was that like Clinton got into office and his question was like, so what's the deal with aliens? Like, there aren't any, Mr. President. Any other questions?
Yeah, but what's
all this work to get to here to ask this question?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess we did not see initially when we were first talking about this, we I think did have a sense of like, all right, well, look, it would take somebody setting up a concert in Vegas to at least capitalize on this. So we'll see whether or not that happens. But do we suspect that anybody is going to be arrested at Area 51 for trespassing? I mean, let's not even go as macabre as being injured or worse, but do we see anybody actually, traverse into?
I think we definitely see people try to make it in. I'm going to guess that there's enough attention on this right now that the Air Force doesn't want negative publicity, so they're probably going to treat them like, coyotes and just, coyotes they would shoot.
At them?
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. Let's say endangered species. It'd be like, all right, you get in the truck. Here's some bottled water. Get out.
Put them in a truck in a cage and then ship them off to a zoo.
And then have them vaccinated.
Chip and tag 'em.
Deloused.
The concern is that, like, and I remember reading years ago reports of some people who tried to go around there, and like they said the first layer of security you encountered was private security. It was like Wackenhut, who would tell you like, hey, this is private lands, whatever, you can't go here. And that was like the first tier. And if you got past there, that would be where which nobody has, but the first layer is like Wackenhut. And again, the problem that they're facing was like, hey, yeah, we've got 22 guys who patrol, 200 miles of border. If 500 people show up, we don't have enough bottled water in trucks to carry you away, and if you get past that perimeter, well, then you're trespassing on a military base and committing a felony, and that becomes, a lot more, different situation.
Yeah, my guess is in that case, you're right. That does kind of shift the economics of it as far as goodwill. So I would say what you do is you very loudly publicly arrest them and very quietly let them off with, community service or whatever.
Yeah, I guess, but in the immediate term, it's just sort of handle it like, I think that was our concerns. Like, what do you do the day of, that period around there? If you get a lot of people who are like, we're going to go there, that's the problem is like let's say on the 19th.
Yeah, I think as fast as you can, you start publicly saying like, hey, look at these guys we just arrested. Remember when we said we were going to arrest everyone? We meant it. Oh, look, that's exactly what they did.
No, that already happened. This happened a couple days ago.
There's actually, you could get tickets now for the Area 51 celebration, which will be held in downtown Las Vegas. I'm on the website for that right now, which was linked to from the Wikipedia. You click through to there, you get the official website.
You know what's funny is, okay, and we know this started off as a joke, but if you were truly a conspiratorial mindset, isn't this exactly the way you would expect the government to carefully make sure that, like, they can't stop us all. Oh, but they can distract us with a honeypot, incling gambling and a concert.
A free party in downtown Las Vegas, many hours
Guys,
away.
can you go back to that the image here? This is the Bud Light sponsor 51 celebration, right? And it is a classified lineup, which is just a great way of saying we have no idea who's showing up to this. You're literally just buying a ticket so you could, I guess, be a part of the meme. Like, is that really what this is? What this is all about is that, like, you were this gathered such attention that we're going to be able to, it's worth it to be there for the punchline of this Facebook setup. Like, I don't know. I don't know what would. I mean, I guess maybe if you're just in Vegas, but like, I don't know who. I mean, maybe if you book tickets to America like those YouTubers did.
This is, man, I'll tell you what, this is backing up my theory. It's very hard to retrofit a story when you're just handed a bucket of attention.
You know, if you go to stormarea51.us, you can actually, there's the official song, the merchandise, which is an alien to the Naruto run.
Wait,
Oh, what is this?
official song?
Official song.
All right, we
Listen to-
gotta hear.
from Finders Keepers. It's called "They Can't Stop Us All."
Facebook group called Storm Area 51. They can't stop us.
I don't want anybody to actually get hurt with this. It was just, it started out as just from a pure stroke of imagination. It's just meant to be funny. I want to do something cool out there now that we have a bunch of people, but I don't want anybody to get hurt.
Over 1 million people interested in finding out what mysteries lie inside the
I don't know.
base.
People kind of want to know.
Can,
what's
can
in
you
there.
pause
I
it?
think-
Yeah.
I just want to believe like the drop is just be safe, drink lots of water. Also, don't go to Area 51.
Oh, melodic.
Kind of a meme.
Now the event has close to 3 million people who say they will attend, and more than 8.9 million have viewed it.
I'm willing to die for the government. Let's do this, 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 do this. If we Naruto run, we can run faster than their bullets.
Yeah.
Always proud to stand for my national anthem. By the way, on the merch store of stormarea51.us, tank tops, which I mean you're gonna need out there in the heat, that read "I clap alien cheeks." I survived Area 51, and I saw them aliens.
I like the alien warning fanny pack that you can keep your one bottle of water in there.
They've got an alien with the Naruto headband doing the run. Oh, they got like an anime girl. What the? Area 51 Chan. Oh my goodness.
There's always an anime girl, Bryce. You should know this by now.
Yeah, I think this is
yeah.
totally going to fizzle. I think virtually nobody's going to show up. You'll see maybe 3 people who thought that there would be more, and they're going to be like, well, nobody's here. I guess we should go.
So I guess is this Snakes on a Plane a thing that exists like in viral world that we all really like in this virtual world, but nobody really wants to go see the movie Snakes on a Plane?
100%, because at least with Burning Man, you know that there are going to be some double-decker buses that look like giant chess pieces at the end of that journey. At the end of this journey, arrest.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that nobody's going to go. I'm going to guess that the Bud Light Area 51 Performers Confidential Festival will be a dud. Everything about this is going to be a disaster and a dud.
Which I think is probably the safest and most humane thing that could happen.
It's a best case scenario.
Yeah. Andrew, what do you think?
I'm still looking up the stats on Snakes on a Plane because I think that movie did better than anybody expected it would do. But yeah, I think
Sure.
that it's an idea that's exciting. But you know, Vegas is a weird. I was just there, got back last night, and like Vegas, like for the actual concert event, Vegas is weird. You know, like will people show up? Maybe because people are looking for something to do. And a free concert downtown, you'll just hear it, and people will just sort of gravitate there like zombies. But as far as the idea of the I don't think any of us ever expected that they would have thousands of people would show up for the Storm Area 51 thing, but a few hundred people would be significant. It would be problematic. And that was sort of the concern that everybody had was like, not so much what's the success of this festival, but what happens when this many people all at once decide to go there.
So the Area 51 celebration has a Facebook page. How many people have? So the big thing was the original Facebook page had what, 4
million or something?
A lot of millions of people. How many people have said that they're going to go to the Area 51 celebration?
5,000.
Francis, 5,000.
Yeah, I'll take the under on that. I'll go 3.
Not 3,000, but 3.
3 three actual people.
I don't know. I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'll go. 800.
1.1 thousand say they're going. 3.8 thousand are interested.
Wow.
So,
we haven't discussed a middle possibility. We've acted as though everybody at Area 51 would just wait for somebody to approach. Seems to be if you're Airport 51, Area 51, you would, spend a few days and a few people's efforts. Like, hey man, go have a bunch of bottled water, find everybody, explain to them in no uncertain terms. We think it's great that you're here. This is hilarious. Good times. Let me say directly to your face that if you cross that line, we're either going to shoot you or you're going to go to jail. Like,
This is the gun I will shoot you with.
I mean, I think that's what'll happen is that they'll diffuse the situation beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, you get the local police to do that. You have the sheriffs, whatever. Like they're the first. Hey, yeah, no, this is here. You don't want to do this. And I think getting that sort of warning there, like, just so you know, this is once you cross here, this is trespassing. Anybody who crosses the line, you're going to get arrested.
And there's
but if you make it all the way, bunker number 3, wink, wink,
clap them cheeks, clap them cheeks.
I wonder if they would maybe have talking points for everybody going out to say like, hey, there is a bunch of really weird stuff that we've done in the past, and then have them kind of share the story of all the declassified stuff, because there's been a bunch of experimental aircraft that they could. I mean, what people want is some kind of aha moment. You could give that to them,
but I think,
and then
Brian,
send them on their way.
You're thinking, I don't know. I mean, like right now, Area 51 is still a functioning Air Force base, right? Like, I think where you're going, which I don't disagree with, is obviously there's a fascination with Area 51. There needs to be some kind of outreach beyond, because culturally it just means something that may or may not be beyond its worth, even as a military station. That there needs to be some kind of outpost where, if 3 million people or 4 million people are going to be excited about this super dumb idea, then maybe there is something to like, hey, let's just have a little Area 51 museum where we show off some of this declassified stuff, because obviously there's a fascination and there's a need for education on it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking in terms of like, which is going to take less effort and energy on behalf of the Air Force, to wait for everybody to cross and have to make the decision of shooting and bad PR that goes with it, or to send out some emissaries.
Anything's happening now. Now what's happening is they're calling the police and they're like, hey, set up roadblocks or checkpoints where you're just informing everybody several miles away on the one road that heads toward where we are that that you should not, if you're heading this direction and you are trying to go visit Area 51, that you cannot, and you should please turn around right now. Like
well,
that I think is
we're dealing with a place that is barely even officially acknowledged. Like there is no Area 51 press office. There is no Area 51, public community outreach program. It is an area that's within a military testing range that is part of a bigger complex or bigger area, government area. And so like there's like there is no communications apparatus directly to the people, because it's like their opinion is, we don't want people talking about us. We don't want attention here. We don't want anything coming here. Yeah. Interesting, looking through the Wikipedia page there, they mentioned a problem they had was because like there's just very few like government mentions of it. Like it just hasn't even been exist in any public record except for rare instances. And there was I guess an incident in Skylab where some Skylab astronauts actually took photos of it. And then they had to redact those photos because, but they wouldn't say where it was, but like this facility, we need to redact it. And when you look at it on Google Earth, by the way, that ain't Area 51. That is an agreed upon representation of what that is.
Whoa. So is it totally artificially constructed, or did they composite it from other photos, or?
The government, there are a number of facilities and places that on Google Earth are not what they look like on Google Earth, including the military bases, etc.
Wow.
So this could be what is, images that were foreign satellite stuff, whatever, but it's agreed upon. Google has an agreement, they work with the government to make sure that, that certain details aren't released or whatever.
Now that's interesting, because I almost would prefer that they just black it out, because I'm comfortable with Google working with the U.S. government and not telling the whole story about military bases, but I don't know that I'm comfortable with them actively deceiving the users of Google Maps. Like, that's them full on lying and throwing their weight behind these images that are known to be false.
Brian, I got news for you. I can name a major theme park. When you look at that on Google Earth, it's photoshopped. It is because they want the service roads and other locations. They do not want people to know how close certain things are to other things because of security reasons.
Wow. Oh, wow. That really messes with me. Unrelatedly, Bryce just Googled Disney World and is about to zoom in on it.
Or places where they keep animals.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Oh, that's right, because you have to deal with is it ELF, the Environmental Liberation Front, or the folks who want to, free all the animals?
Or just crazy people. But yeah, so that's one of the things that's happened is that as far as places that we know that we're concerned about security with, those images, things like that will be redacted or changed to make it not so easy to use that for those purposes.
How wild.
Now, that's not to say you can't get that sort of stuff, but if you go to if you go to other countries that have satellite imaging stuff they sell, you can find different things. And that's one of the things that's happened is people have looked at commercial Russian maps of places and this, and notice wow, there's a difference here. It's
It's interesting. I guess it does make sense for Google to want to play ball with the property owners, because if the property owner says, "Hey, man, would you hide these service roads because we don't want people sneaking in through this stuff?" Then the alternative is if they say, "No, man, it's the truth. We're telling the truth. These are real satellite photos." Then you find yourself in a conflagration, a fight over who owns that. Like, "Hey, man, you don't have the right to tell the world what my house looks like." That's probably a fight they don't want to have.
Yeah,
Who owns the satellite imagery?
Well, I mean,
Barbra Streisand tried.
Well, correct. Yeah. But again, my guess is it's just cheaper and easier to not have that fight and instead to sort of cooperate.
Yeah, I mean that gets into, and that's going to be, and we've talked about this before, but a lot of what you see on Google Earth or Google satellite stuff is not satellite, it's airplane photography, because the resolution is actually, and it may be pedantic, but really it's an important point, is a lot of that is because a lot of what we can do with, there was a couple weeks ago, we had a thing where Trump released photos of showing, I think it was an Iranian site that looked like it
was a botched launch of some, I don't know if it was a satellite or a missile or.
You get the whole, zabrudering of, what the resolution of this, because there are people trying to figure out which satellite this was, what was the resolution of this, was it downgraded, et cetera, to figure out the capabilities of what, that can do. But a lot of these photos are actually, well, that's satellite, but some stuff is airplane photography, but which just gets mixed in there with the satellite stuff. And you can tell sometimes the difference because you'll see things that are very low res, and that's probably satellite, but cities and stuff which are super high res are actually aerial photography.
Yeah.
Somebody suggested, why don't they just fly drones over Area 51?
My guess is that the Air Force would have some thoughts about you doing that.
I'm gonna scuba dive into this Navy base.
I'll tell you an idea that's smarter than both of those, and that's supporting us on Patreon. Patreon.com/weirdthings, where you can kick us in a little bit of scratch so we can keep this show rolling. We also do the After Things podcast, and you are able to get that earlier if you are a patron. So head on over there, patreon.com/weirdthings.
Now, I'm going to say, though, we laughed at that, the whole drone thing, because we're still, in our mindset, the guy going out there, I'm going to see what's going on here as I stand up there on the cliff, wide open with my remote controller. But it's not a dumb suggestion in the idea that in the long run, because, we just had, a bunch of these oil refineries in Saudi Arabia were attacked by drones.
I was going to say, yeah. Go ahead and ask the kingdom how funny the idea of a drone attack is, because it just took out an oil field that is going to impact how much you're paying at the pump because of how much they normally get out of there.
In the conflicts in Syria, we've been hearing, there's a lot of things going on that are in battlefields that we don't quite know because there's, reporters, I don't want to get murdered. There were talked about before, attacks on Russian military bases, which was a massive drone attack. And we hear drone, you're trying to figure out, what kind of drone are we? And probably not quadcopters, but a lot of these are not that different than what you could buy off of Amazon, which are, the airplanes and propeller remote control airplane stuff, where there was an attack there where it looked like they probably put a bunch of just some C4 onto like 40 of these things and just started sending them one after the other. And that is the world we're moving into.
Yeah, I believe it. Let me double check that I'm getting the name right. Gavin, I know his first name's Gavin. I forget his last name, but he's like the world's one of the foremost security experts. He is bodyguard to the stars. When somebody has a stalker who gets too close, he he's the one that diffuses the situation. Gavin de Becker, that's his name. Gavin de Becker and Associates. He wrote a book, The Gift of Fear, where he talks about how the conventional advice, stuff like pull out a restraining order or whatever, is the worst possible advice, because all that does is define a line, and it invites people to go right up to that line, and then eventually they cross it, and then they feel wronged by you when they're arrested by the police, and then next thing you know, they show up with a revolver or whatever. But he did like a 2-hour interview on Sam Harris's podcast, and he truly seems to feel that there's no greater existential threat than drone technology. Like, anybody can be assassinated now by anyone for less than $10,000. And even if it's just a matter of just sending 50 quadcopters to run into your body and chop it up, much less bother to have bombs on it or guns or whatever. It's remarkable to me, and I don't want to make this my recurring bit, is where I'm constantly wondering, why aren't more people using technology to conduct mass murders? But it is remarkable to me that so few bad actors have taken advantage of this terrible technology, or I don't know. They've done terrible things with it.
I do love that this is your new character, Brian. You are the Andy Rooney of future tech murder and
why aren't
genocide.
people doing the purge every day?
Well, all of this is fueled by I'm scared of this, right? So it's not me suggesting that anybody get to work. It's just
reminding us that it's possible and
exactly,
very cheap.
Exactly. It's very cheap.
Brian's not telling you to start committing genocide
God damn
with
it.
drones. He's just saying that a real man would have done
No,
it.
I'm not.
Yes, I agree on all of that. We're going to. Why have we seen more? I know we're seeing more in the battlefield. We're seeing when you have, when you're getting one group that's not as well armed as other groups, but they're looking for what they can do. Using drones, things like this is a thing that's happening more and more, because it does give you think about like, what you can go walk into Fry's Electronics and buy, a DJI with cameras and all this sort of stuff. It's pretty damn useful, extremely useful. And there's military versions of this, which are even more powerful, but which you could do just alone for, if you're Group A is trying to fight Group B and having some sort of city sort of skirmish, being able to launch those things up there and see is helpful. But like, as you point out, being able to put explosives on those things and fly them over. And I'd be curious to know what's going along in, certain parts of the Middle East and other places along certain borders and stuff, because it wouldn't surprise me if this is more prevalent than we probably realize. One of the big issues is range, of course, but these are all solvable things. And we've talked about, you've mentioned before, like you could start putting facial recognition on these things. And that's when there's growing, there's a growing industry in trying to develop technology to mitigate this, using things to listen for the sound of drones, using lasers to try to take them out. And I think that will be, another big step. And I think that's going to be one of the things that's going to, we're excited about the idea of drone delivering things, but then the idea that, well, what's the trade-off? Well,
what if the thing they're delivering is death?
Yeah. Well, how comfortable are we with flying robots overhead that can deliver death? Like, if you hear the sound of a drone and, we'll see. Let's see.
And by the way, there is an anonymity to it. Remember the Gatwick Airport, which crippled air travel worldwide for several days. They never got a person. They arrested people that they were under suspicion, but they got released without incident. There has been no arrest for the person that actually did it, according to the authorities. That's how much anonymity these provide you.
How far off? Go ahead.
Yeah, I I'm concerned, but I also try to remind myself. I was a kid. There was a Superman episode, the Superman television series, and in it you had at the very end, Clark Kent dresses the audience directly to talk to us about the potential of a scary new technology. And that was the idea of plastic surgery and the idea that criminals could be made to look like completely different people. That was like legit, like, this is becoming a problem where this could be an instance where how will we find these men, blah, blah, blah. And you're like,
So don't trust your family. If you suspect them to be a communist, report them to the government immediately.
Yeah, but again, like, and that to say that has been an issue with people who have the money and what some guys, some fugitives and stuff have done that, to reconstructive surgery to do that. It's not probably the issue we think that it was going to be, but it wasn't a non-issue.
Yeah, so
watch a supercut of Mission Impossible masks and stuff being ripped off.
how far off do you think we are from a commercially available drone sentry system? Something. So imagine you have 3 base units. Drones take off. They patrol the perimeter using infrared cameras, looking to see if anybody's on your property. However many acres, let's say hypothetically 7.5. And then they come back and they land and they recharge and they go out an hour later. Like 5 years less. More?
Oh, I think there's somebody selling a version of that right now. I'm sure.
Yeah, bang the under on that.
That's
I
crazy.
go way under on 5 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Bryce, do you have a?
Yeah, what's your
I'm
take?
Sure you're the
Oh, he's already found it.
I'm actually looking and seeing if people have these because there are like this is a product from Sunflower Labs,
Oh
which has
my
an
God.
autonomous drone system. I don't know if this actually does charging on its own, but it will. Oh no, yeah, self-charging base, and it flies around and it has these sunflowers that light up your property.
Wow.
So yeah, if you took 0 days and 0 hours,
Okay, then you're the winner.
that's
Hold
a
on.
payout.
That's sunflower-labs.com. All right.
yeah.
Yeah, because Brian, nothing you said about that wasn't something you couldn't do right now. I mean, like that's why we're like, yeah, now because it was just all of those things. Like we need a drone and we need to be able to swap battery packs.
Yeah, and I guess the only
sorry.
question is whether or not there's commercial demand for it, or if somebody suspects there's commercial demand for it.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be, on that they have a very clever solution. If you look back at that, like the thing has a little housing unit it goes back into, protects it from weather. I have like one of these robot vacuums and it's great. And it's a wonderful thing because it can keep the place clean. You can set it on a schedule and vacuums. I live in a small apartment and it works out wonderfully well. And more people are getting those because they're convenient. As a kid we had one of those. We had a pool cleaning. One of those robot, and it's all that is just a thing that uses random motion to clean the pool. And those things just trickle their way through. And a property drone's not practical for me in my apartment. Maybe a little flying one that when I'm gone that just floats around the apartment and takes a look at things could be practical, but for for your compound or even your house in your backyard and stuff, like I could see, there is something neat about and intimidating about the idea that if somebody's on your grounds, all of a sudden this thing is floating around watching you.
Yeah. And just that sound, that beehive sound, and all of a sudden it stops and it's definitely looking at you. That'd be huge. If I could, I would just attach a bunch of laser pointers to them and then just add the thing. It's like all it does is stop and put a laser pointer on your chest. That's all you need to say is just like you're marked.
So you're definitely because I guess Bryce, you found out that this is in pre-production still.
Right. They are aiming to sell it in 2020. The Sunflower Labs B is what it's called.
Looks like there might be old
Little sponsorship
verified
opportunity
Brian,
there.
Little verified Brian slide into the DMs of
Well, that's
hey boss.
that's that company. But you look at like there are other companies that are other ones selling stuff like that though.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that
Nightingale Security, which says that they've got this stuff for that. So
Sure.
and it's interesting because they all have these little hangers that like.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now this Nightingale one is more of a larger, more I guess I don't know, consumer size drone. But It looks like, oh wow, it's like following a person as they're walking through a parking lot.
Hey, Bill.
Night
I like
vision,
it. I
thermal
like everything
pocket.
about all this. Yeah, I'm taking notes left and right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, yeah, I mean, this is definitely, I don't know. I mean, drones, man. What are you gonna do? I know that's the stupidest thing to say, but like these things are crazy.
They really are, because we've already had drone peeping toms, people who've gotten arrested for watching, the drones sliding up, going, "Yeah," watching people get undressed in their third story apartment or whatever. Well, and especially like as AI gets better at handling, big data, and you could just give it just general rules like, hey man, grab everybody's face, run a search, find out who they are, send me their Facebook profile, automate a message saying, hey, you were caught doing this. I'm going to alert the authorities, then alert the authorities. And then when the authorities don't respond, have my lawyer send them a letter saying, hey, reminder that you're supposed to handle these threats and all that stuff. I mean, that's automation.
It's we're gonna call the cops, so the police drone shows up, right?
And then your drone gets interviewed by the police drone and does its best to explain what happened.
Then you get a court appearance, so you send your lawyer drone to court, and then the judge drone is there.
Well, yeah, because there's got to be an emergency warrant issued. So the judge drone has to come out to issue the emergency warrant. And then your lawyer drone shows up with another lawyer drone that's just there to deal. And next thing you know, you just have 8 drones facing each other, whirring very, very loudly. That ends up to the
I would love to believe there's
about Supreme Court.
I'd love to believe that there's a particularly remarkable case that inspires a movie called Judge Drone. And at some point, the drone says, I am the law.
I am the drone.
I am the drone.
Yeah, I think what we're going to see, though, is there will be more cases of, like, when you talk about weapons on drones, I'm sure we'll see more of it. And then I think a lot of the ways that we try to mitigate terrorist acts right now is law enforcement spends a lot of time trying to figure out who is thinking about doing this, vis-a-vis going online, the internet, talking to people and doing this sort of stuff. And that's a separate discussion about entrapment versus proactive enforcement. But that will be, I think you're going to start hearing, more cases about like, oh, so-and-so tried to buy a mechanism for firing a gun on a drone and found out it was a sting and this and that. And
yeah, I the libertarian in me wants to push back against that, but I can't think of a better solution. I mean, the
celebrity in me says no.
But the whole pre-crime idea, like, I mean, maybe that's the only way to stop it in a world where once you've made the decision and you press a button and it's all automated and too cheap and it's a suicide drone, then maybe the only way to stop it is with a pre-crime kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't have an answer. I don't, that idea of where do our civil liberties end? And, because we live in that where it's easier when we're talking about things where, and it's a lot of politics. Like, it's easy to talk about things. Well, my property line is here, and when I stand here, it's fine, But then it's like, yes, but, if I can do this thing here, and you never knew it was me, and it affects you over there.
Because also, like the thing with even that Sentry drone, like let's use Brian's property for a second. Like, you're surrounded by other people with private property, right? Like there's certainly plenty of area that you own. You have 7 acres that you can patrol, but also it's like, is this now going to be the law or even just something that you understand that like, hey, don't worry, my drone runs on a geofencing thing, so I'm even at the widest angle that it's taking, I'm not peeping over your fence, right? I'm not looking where it's not supposed to. Like, how do we even reconcile that?
Well, I was going to remind everybody, if they hadn't heard the story on Night Attack, like even in our suburban neighborhood right now, there's a common green that I was just practicing flying the drone around, but there's such an aversion to the idea of being peeped on that my neighbor, who, as far as I know, is an upper middle class family, probably in the tech sector or whatever, I hear this ba-thump, ba-thump, and I look over and dude has a pellet gun out and is actively trying to shoot down my $3,000 drone, and with his 12-year-old son. And even after I shouted, hey, knock it off, he continued to hold the gun. It wasn't until I said, knock it off or I'm going to call the cops, that he sheepishly put the gun away. This is in a neighborhood. So
Yeah.
I think we have a ways to evolve on what the rules are on that stuff.
Well, and that's a situation where that person didn't understand the rules, and like people like, you know, if I stand on my roof and I'm putting my antenna, and you know, my neighbor's in the backyard, you know, putting on her sun lotion delicately, I'm not a peeping Tom. I'm a guy doing my business on my property. You know, that's what my lawyer said anyways. And you're like, right, probably. Like, no, like you're outside, you know, airplanes flying overhead, people in taller buildings, whatever. Like that's if I'm like leaning over your fence, violating, you need to shoot me too, as far as I'm concerned, you know, but people have this sense of feeling like, no, like I was like, we talked about before, we've mentioned more the Barbara Streisand effect. She was upset when photos of her house showed up on the internet. And these were photos taken from from outside the property. And it's like, yeah, that can be done. You don't, you know, of course in Europe, different, but.
I mean, like, is part of it like, if you have a Sentry drone and you've got neighbors and you're like, hey, look, I just want to let you know, I got a Sentry drone going. I have it geofenced, so it's not taking any of the video, but as a sign of being a good neighbor, here is the login, so you can, if you ever think that it's looking at you, you can see exactly what it's taking. Like, is that where we're evolving? Like, is that going to be mandatory that, you know, there are only so much of this you can keep secret?
I would say that there's a middle step, because if you give them, if they're suspicious of you, then they'll also be suspicious of the login credentials. You're like, oh, this is probably some fake version that hides the stuff that they're really doing. So I think a middle ground would be, hey, just so you know, this is a 4Z edition of it, and they have the trusted certificate that they guarantee that it's only pointed in towards my property and not looking out at yours.
My point is, like, I don't think you have to provide that guarantee, because we've solved that before security cameras. I can have my security camera aimed off my property into your property. I can do that. I'm allowed to do that. You know, if I have a security camera on top of a mast that captures everything in the neighborhood, you have no expectation of privacy that you do something outside in public view.
Yeah.
That's what neighbor anyways.
So we're looking at 2020, so call it 2021 for this Bumblebee thing to come out, this bee whatever. How popular do you think these will be?
I think we're gonna, this will be a pop, especially for like larger estates that you know, like what do you worry about if you're living a little bit outside of civilization, but you've built your dream house, you built your like gigantic mansion? Like, you worry the most about people that aren't supposed to be there and getting as big of a forewarning as possible, right? Like, so this is a no-brainer.
Yeah. Man, that's
yeah, I
crazy.
think. Yeah, you're gonna have it where people who are already investing money in security systems, you know, a higher rate, where they're gonna look at, like, can this, you know, if you're a factory that needs to have 3 guys to go patrol, but you realize, oh, we can have 1 person on duty and we can have a drone that does it, then we will do that instead. Those are your first steps. But then, like, yeah, people like your situation, Brian, where you have a large piece of property, when you see, oh, it's $900 for this thing, it charges itself, it's got a really good reputation, you know, yeah, sure, gonna do it. And I think you're gonna see that, and then I think you're gonna get smaller ones where it's like, oh, I got a backyard and I like to keep an eye on my dog, my dog's out back there, etc. I think you're gonna start to see that, you know.
Yeah.
And they show like the suspicious guy walk around the backyard, and because you think about, like, you know, any place where you put on a light where you have it triggered automatically to turn on because you want, like, somebody who's approaching your house, you want them to know, like, hey, step off.
Man,
yeah.
If you told me in 1992, when I saw Terminator 2, if you told me that, by the way, you're going to live long enough for hunter-killers to be real, and you will not be able to wait until you could buy one, you're going to be super excited about your own HK patrolling your property. That's amazing.
Yeah, I remember I was talking about this yesterday. A friend, like, watching Runaway, which was directed by Michael Crichton, which was about, you know, the future of.
Oh, that's the one with the robot bugs?
Yeah, like all these robots. in the opening, there's this shooting in a house where apparently a domestic robot got control of a gun, and you see the robot. It's like this, this Heathkit, thing. Like, how did I get a gun? But anyhow, to go into the house, they have a drone. They have like a copter drone with a camera on it, and you try not to see the wires. And they said, I remember as a kid watching that, going like, I think that's too heavy. I don't think you'd be able to make a thing like that fly. And now I'm like, well, no. Guess what, little Andrew? You can and you will, and you can go buy one for $100.
Everything's gonna sound like drone noise in the future, right? Is that the future we are going toward? Is that like there will just always be a low level like and like you're like, oh man, I can't wait to get out into the country, and it's not the noise of cars or the emergency sirens. It's like, oh, it's so good to get out of the drone buzzing.
Well, that's why like flying cars are not the exciting thing that people think they are, because they look cool, but then you imagine what it's like if you had a half dozen of those flying back and forth, 50 feet overhead.
Well, and of course what happens is it's like, oh, well then have a skyport in every neighborhood. It's like, no, there's a reason that we put our airports on the edge of town, because if it's powerful enough to fly, it's and using a jet engine, my guess is it's going to blast out and really upset a lot of people with its noise.
Yeah, and that's not saying there won't be a place for it like in downtown off of buildings, things like this or that, but yeah, the whole, the idea of moving all this. That's why, like, we've been like kind of, bullish on things like Boring Company and tunneling stuff, is that, you're putting this out of sight, out of way. And here we're watching a flying car and a company that's conveniently drives to this park in the middle of nowhere so it can actually, take off, which.
Yeah, there's no runway needed, Andrew. So don't worry about a runway, because you're just pulling out into what looks suspiciously like a runway.
I believe this is a VTOL, vertical takeoff.
It's got these electric pods that come out there, and you're kind of like, shouldn't I just, I don't know, Ubered to this helicopter port instead?
Like
instead of the overhead of trying to bring, I don't know.
That's actually a really good point, because I think all of this idea of having a car that flies is based on a 20th century mentality of ownership of your vehicle, where it's like, if I'm not driving it, it needs to spend 23 hours a day locked in a garage doing nothing. And then I can use it when I want to use it. And of course, the millennial mindset is more like, I don't really want a thing. What I want is the ability to move fast anywhere I want.
Yeah, and that your average car price, you want to pay $70,000 or $80,000 for something, as you point out, it's going to not flown very often. If you're like, we got a $500,000 thing that's much more comfortable and a much better, smoother ride, and you only need to rent it for 45 minutes, well, that sounds like a better deal.
What was the? I was listening to the Under the Influence podcast, a podcast about marketing and advertising, and it was an older episode from I think 5 or 6 years ago, and he claimed, and this is almost certainly wrong, that in the entire lifetime of a drill, the number of minutes it sees use is, I want to say like 16 or 17 minutes in the entire multiple decades of a lifetime of somebody having an electric drill.
I believe it. I think about how long I'm drilling for more than a minute. I'm trying to start a fire.
Not going to touch that one. Hey, who's got picks?
Hey, I'll do a little self-pick here. We are recording the beginning of the second season of America's Next Top Podcaster. If you want to catch up with the first season, you can go ahead and find it at America's Next Top Podcaster. But it's I'll tell you what, it first season was something that really affected me a lot more than I thought it was going to. Like the contestants really put a lot of time and effort into doing different stuff, either together or separate as the competition moves forward. And it really kind of put the fear of God into me on like, hey, even though we do this for a living, like, well, what are extra things that we can do? How can we plus everything as I criticize these people's work? So go ahead and check it out.
Dude, I had a similar experience. We did our How to Build an Audience Through Online Video class over at Wizard Academy. And once you spend 2 full days explaining, if you're not doing blank, then you're doing it wrong. And it's like, for the love of God, would you just do blank? And then you turn that lens on yourself. You're like, Oh, I should really do more of the things I'm telling everybody else to do.
Oh my God, yeah. No, while I was doing it, it was just there's always those moments, especially because I do a lot of stuff by myself, and so I'm recording it and editing it, and I'm like, ah, man, it'd be cool if I did this, and then I get to that decision gate of like, do I do it or do I just think, man, F it, this is fine, and I'm like, if I do the F it, this is fine, then all I can think of is everybody who I just criticized on this show listening to what I'm doing and being like, oh, what a hypocrite. Screw this guy.
Yeah.
So, you got to do it.
So, did I already recommend the formula? I think I did a couple weeks ago about the scientific kind of attempt to codify the laws of success.
No, Brian. Haven't heard you talk about this book.
Oh, did you already get it? Are you reading it?
Based on your recommendation, I ordered. Well, first shipment got lost, and they just refunded my money. And I'm like, no, I want the book, so I had to go reorder it. But yeah.
Have you had a chance to dive in yet?
It's got words.
Okay. Well, I stumbled across a really good follow-up. This is a case of Audible's recommendation engine doing a really good job saying, hey, man, if you dug this, a lot of people like this. It's Alchemy, and it's from an advertising guy out of Great Britain who explains it's that yellow one there in the middle. You were already there. Sorry.
I will find it.
Okay, but basically it talks about how by crafting the right story and shaping someone's experience, you can do the impossible. Most people, when it comes to stuff like let's say you take a train ride. What's the problem? Train ride takes too long. Why don't you like it? Because it takes too long. Well, what can we do? We can shave 15 minutes off of your train ride by investing $2 billion in infrastructure to make faster maglev trains and all that other stuff. Truthfully, though, it's not really the 15 minutes that you want. It's the you want the experience. What if you could go slower on a train ride and yet have people report that it's way, way better and the best thing that ever happened to them? And so in this case, he proposes a counterexample of, okay, well, who's riding the train? Mostly people who have, I don't know what the right word is, whatever the train pass is. Part of the rules of the train pass is that you have to make an appointment, and that's your one time, and that's your one chance to catch the train. If you don't get it, then bad news, you're going to have to reschedule, and it's a big whole thing. So as a result, the unintended side effect is that people make their appointment because they're so afraid of missing their train, they're showing up 30 to 40 minutes early, hanging around, taking a bunch of time. So he's saying, like, look, you guys are spending $2 billion to shave 15 minutes off. I can give you 40 minutes off for only $250,000. And he says, what if we allowed this pass, if you're part of this train pass or whatever, what if we reconfigured the trains such that it was not a miserable experience if you showed up 5 minutes too late and instead you were able to get on the very next train? What would happen? Well, first of all, you wouldn't feel the need to show up 30 or 40 minutes early. Your experience would be so much better. And so he goes on to talk about how we gave up on alchemy in the Middle Ages because we were too obsessed with having it be logically and factually lead transmuted into gold, when truthfully what the people who are pursuing alchemy wanted was not lead turned into actual gold. They didn't know what to do with gold. What they wanted was a low value commodity transformed into a high value commodity. And he says, I could deliver you that. What you do is you create a new thing called Black Royal Gold, and it's a special anodizing treatment that you do to lead, and then you get a few royalty on board that are going to have their crowns. They're going to refuse to have their crowns crafted out of gold, but instead have it crafted out of Black Royal lead or whatever, or Black Royal Gold, which is just lead with a appropriately rainbow shiny surface on it. Guess what? That'll cause everybody to want to emulate them, and before you know it, you've done it. You've transformed lead into gold. So he gives a bunch of these counterintuitive examples when it comes to decision making, when it comes to marketing, and this is one of those books that has the benefit of being read by the author. And he does one of my favorite things in audiobooks, because if you are being paid to read an audiobook, you have to read every word correctly. But if you're the author of the audiobook, you have the license to do things like get to the part where a chart is depicted and then break character and say, all right, this doesn't make sense in an audiobook, but picture a chart that looks like this, and you got these things over here and this other thing over here. I love all of that. And so it's really good. I'm really, really enjoying Alchemy. Highly recommend it.
Cool. Nice. I have a pick. I got a weird pick. So I've been trying to use the exercise room at my apartment a little bit more, and I have found that a really interesting thing has been the health app on the iPhone. I don't know if you guys have ever used this at all, but it's cool. It'll like link up to different apps. So I have a Nike running app thing, and so it'll give it all of my running data. And then I can, like, if I go use the rowing machine, I can type in rowing machine, and I can put in about how many calories I burned and how long I was working out for. But it's interesting because the phone also acts as like a pedometer, so it knows about how many steps you take a day. It's interesting. I don't have the Apple Watch or anything, so I don't have like all this heart rate data and all the standing up activity, but it's interesting, and I think it's really cool that that's like a built-in part of the phone, that it's got this whole tracking ecosystem. It's pretty neat.
It is, when we talk about like where Apple is going and what Apple is doing, and often we get fixated on, well, there are 3 cameras now instead of 2, wah wah wah, or well, this is the Bionic 12 and the Bionic 11 was garbage, but it's easy to go like, there are probably, and this is just me guessing, there are probably more doctors working for Apple on medical and health technology than just about any other institution right now. Particularly when it comes to, like, you look at like the new Apple Watch with, it's got an EKG in it, and it's warning, not as good as going to an actual doctor. True. Warning, better than no doctor. What they're doing, the fall detection, all this stuff, that is the area where Apple says they're looking at what the future of Apple is. And every time I watch, like, I hate wearing a watch, and like I had an Apple Watch. I don't have one. I just don't like the idea of a watch, but I keep looking back at, like, man, as a medical device, is something to keep track. These things keep getting better and better and better, and Apple is investing a lot into making, because they want at a point where you're going to be like, well, of course I wear, like, in the future, we always thought about people having this device that monitored your health and everything else. Mm-hmm. That's where they're headed.
Yeah.
So,
and something you can do that I don't know if a lot of people know about, but you can have a medical like contact sheet on your phone. So you can put in all your pertinent information and allergies and stuff. And if anyone does the the multi-click thing here on your phone, it can actually pull up all of your medical data. So, if for some reason you're out and about and something happens, they first responders can have access to your contact information or emergency contact. So look at that. Because
I've got a great new app. It's going to be a microphone that listens for drones. It's going to be called the Brian Duck app.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a observation. I'm not a car guy. I've talked about it. I'm not a car guy. I'm not even like really like I'm like, hey, if I have my computer and a place to sleep and room with my projects, I'm a happy guy. I'm just not I have a lot of crap, but I'm not really like a materialistic kind of guy. When it comes to like, a gadget, like, oh, I want to play this new thing, whatever. So when I got my Tesla was like, oh yeah, this is the thing I want because I like the idea of an electric car. I like the idea of self-driving. I like the idea of what it could do. I couldn't, I just was like, I could never justify buying the S or the 3 as much as I'm like, oh, I could do it. But because it was just like, to me, that was just a bridge too far. Like, I couldn't justify that. When the 3 came out, I'm like, okay, it'll be the nicest car I've ever bought. And I got it. And I've had it now over a year now. It was a year that I got it. I got it last year. And it's been wonderful. And I did my first big, long road trip this weekend, though. We went to Vegas. I said, I want to take this thing to Las Vegas, from Los Angeles to Vegas. And my concern was like, well, what is charging like now? I know there are places to charge along the way, but there are a lot more people like me with these cars on the road. Was I going to have a problem getting, they can have a charger, but if you have to wait an hour to charge, it's really not worth it, right? I was close to saying, I should just rent a car with, because I'd have the range anxiety. Maybe I should just rent a car instead because I could just fill up any gas station. And I'm like, I looked online to look at the charging stations. I checked stuff the day before to see what was available. I'm like, you know what? All right, I'm going to drive this car because I want to see, I want to go ahead and do the road trip with it. and started on Friday afternoon. And we stopped first in, I want to say it was Baker, California, to drive from LA to Vegas. And this was the middle of the afternoon. Let me show you on a Friday. This was the charging station.
Totally empty. Wow.
Yeah, there was like, as we started leaving, there were a few more Teslas pulled up. And so I think later that evening, it probably got to like half occupancy or whatever. And it was great. We pulled in, we got a charge, no problem. We went over, got something to drink. So we charged one way into Vegas, went to Vegas, had fun. And then I charged it all the way up. So I had like, half my charge left Vegas. Made one stop along the way at another charging station, which was in Barstow, charged it and got home with, I have 160 miles on Tesla right now. So, I could have made the trip probably from my place to Vegas, and rolled in with, very little charge left, but probably would have been doable.
Yeah.
So.
And by the way, that is, for folks who are not from that area, from the LA area, like that is a pretty good stress test, because LA, there's a portion of LA that just empties out into Vegas reliably out on Friday, back on Sunday. So if you are rolling in and there's that kind of occupancy available, then that is about as good of a test as you're gonna get.
Yeah, so they've put in part of what Tesla's been doing. It's not just a car; they've built a network of chargers, superchargers. They're building, globally, and they keep adding them because they want to get over like charging. And like the Tesla I have goes, there's 320 miles. Has a greater range than my last car did, but there are a lot more gas stations than charging stations in theory. I mean, the point I make with an electric car is, when you go home at night, you plug it in. There's not a gas station in your garage. If you're like most people, you still have to go to a gas station. But with an electric, you charge it at home each night. And if that's your regular routine, you never really think about going anywhere to charge. I don't live in an apartment complex. I have to charge mine at a supercharger. And that's never been a problem for me. That's never been an issue for me. But anyhow, if you're thinking about that or inclined towards that, it was a pleasant, nice experience. And your region may be different though, but they've been doing a really good job. And the way it works too is you get into the car and you say, I want to go to Las Vegas. And it says, okay, you should stop. If you stop here and you just charge for 10 minutes, you'll be able to complete your journey. So the car tells you the route, tells you how long, you should probably charge for. So I said I wanted to go to Vegas. Like, oh, here's how to go to Vegas. I only have to stop for 10 minutes.
That's great.
So there you go.
There's no way you're just going to stop for 10 minutes, though. You're going to.
No, I might as well get a full charge.
Yeah.
And, it's what I did, and it was pleasant. And then
how long
on the
does it take for the full charge?
You can do now like 45, 50 minutes to get it like up to like 320 miles of charge.
And is that the supercharger or
the battery, so it slows down, but you can get up to like 280, 260 miles in like 30 minutes or something. It just, then after that, it's like, how much longer do you want to wait?
Yeah.
And do these only work on the official Tesla superchargers, or are there other chargers that it works with?
Oh, you can use community chargers. You can use, there's a grocery store across the street from me, and they have like the Burbank chargers, and those are much slower chargers. And you can just plug it into, you can plug it into 110 current or just house current too.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And if I plug it into like just the regular, I have a plug in there, like a regular, I can plug it into the wall, and it's only going to get at like 4 miles per hour. But let's say you're visiting friends and you're going to park your car overnight, and then you park it there, and by the next day, you have 50, 60
It's a bit like trickle charging your iPhone off of somebody's laptop versus plugging it into a proper adapter.
Yeah, plugging a Tesla into the little iPhone USB brick.
And it's a different way of doing things, different. And for me, not charging it at home, meaning that I have to charge it, outside. And I was worried, like, is this going to be a problem? It's not been over a year now, not been an issue for me, but I don't have a regular commute. I'm an infrequent driver, but there are a lot of places that I go to, like, oh, I could just charge it here, charge it there. So
cool.
So that's my pick.
Cool. Tesla.
Yeah. The Tesla Model 3. So, gentlemen, it's been weird.
There we go.
Don't gang right.
Hey. All right. Good episode, everybody. Oh, my phone did not like me hitting that emergency contact thing. Alrighty. Well, let's take a moment, take a quick break, come back for some after things.
Cool. All right, and I'll have a heart out to pick up Callie at the airport at the bus stop at.
Jeez, man, where does she?
at 3:30. I think 3:35 is when I'm gonna have to bolt.
Okay. Hey, Justin.
Hey, man, what's going on?
Oh, you know. Just doing the Monday shows.
Yeah, are you excited for the move?
Yeah, I will be. It'll be fun. I think it'll actually be a pretty cool thing. We'll probably set up a GoPro on time lapse or something, so we have a little bit of the process. But yeah,
Where do you think?
it'll be cool.
Where are you putting the like the stand-ups that you have there now? Where in the studio are you setting everything up?
So you've seen the studio. If people have seen the video of the studio, they know that there's a windowed area near the entrance door to it. So the computer will be around that space. It'll probably actually not be parallel to that window. It'll actually probably be 90 degrees to it, kind of like how I'm sort of 90 degrees to Brian here.
So if I'm looking into that window, am I looking over your shoulder? Am I looking at Bryce in profile?
Yeah, you'll see me in profile. You'll still be able to see all the monitors and stuff, but you'll also probably get a good view of Brian. So Brian will be opposite of that window. He'll probably be around that area against that wall.
Gotcha. So it'll be up, kind of toward the first
the entrance half. Yeah.
Of the entrance.
Yeah. So there'll probably be a little more distance between us where we are now, because like right now it's like 10 feet or so.
Yeah.
Where that'll probably be like maybe 15 feet, but it'll depend, because we might put him further away from the, because right now he's like a couple of inches away from the backdrop here, where we might also have some separation there. So yeah, we'll take this bifold. We'll also, I know Bonnie said Bonnie found some fold up wood panel things, so we might.
Yeah.
I think it was Annalisa was saying she might try to do something with them, so we might have those as also decoration things. But yeah, it won't be too much all at once. It'll be cool. It'll be good. Actually, it'll be interesting getting this bi-panel out of here, because there's so much stuff kind of affixed to it now. Like so like the BB wall here, the lights are like attached to it. The Brian's rim light on the other side there is just kind of clamped in. There's a Vive lighthouse over there that I don't know how it's been secured in. Though the rest of it's fine. It's just freestanding, which I don't love. But yeah,
I mean, that's gonna be helpful in the early going with that studio, where you can literally just just standing that up behind him and worrying about all the tech stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be good. And like, it's a part of the set that doesn't get seen very much at all. So
yeah, not anymore, right?
So even though it's a little older, it'll feel a little fresher.
What's up?
The bifold.
Oh yeah.
You know what I just bought, which is amazing? Have you seen these fold-away green screens?
Yes, those are like the Elgata's got one, but I'm sure there are
I have
many.
not. What is it?
So it's basically, it looks like a large, remember those pull-down movie screens?
Sure.
So imagine one that sits on the floor. You can pop open the top. I have one, but I'm trying to show you right now. You pop open the top. There's a handle. You grab the handle, you pull it up, and it's 6.5 foot tall green screen.
Mm-hmm.
The one I have is a lot like this, but it's actually, I got mine is taller than this one, but
yeah, these little Elgato ones are just for like streamers.
Yeah, they open up in seconds.
Wow.
Literally a couple seconds, and you've got a green screen right behind you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
They're like $120.
Yeah. Did you need to go take a break, Justin?
No, I'm good.
You're good? All right. Well, we want to roll into after things? Question mark. Do we know what we'll?
We're gonna get an update.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well then, let's do that. Brian's got a hard out in about 35 minutes, so just keep that in mind. If he
Probably
disappears.
during picks, I'll sneak away.
Alrighty. Well then, Andrew, take it away in 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to the After Things podcast. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Brian Brushwood.
Hello, beautiful people.
Justin Robert Young,
Hello, friends.
Mr. Bryce Castillo.
Hello.
I didn't actually call you because you were drinking, Brian. I just said, oh, I should do Brian's name in rotation. And
I made sure to
Brian's
take a
drinking.
tiny sip. And what's funny is on the second one, I expected you to give a second, and also Brian Brushwood.
So let's take a look inside Brian's brain maybe about a week ago. You're going to fail. You're going to fail. Everything sucks. It's not going to work.
And this
Justin,
is
take it over
eerie.
for
I
his
feel like you have an implant in my brain.
You've come all this way just so more people can watch you implode. Oh, finally, such a gigantic mess that not even your best friends will be able to forgive you.
Yeah, man.
Pretty accurate?
Yeah, pretty much. We reached like we talked about last week. We're right at the cusp. As a matter of fact, we didn't talk about it on the show, but this is the last broadcast of the Weird Things program and the After Things program from this studio. From this studio, which has existed, what started as a spare bedroom and has for 11 years been an ad hoc studio, is going to be replaced with an actual proper studio. And in building everything, we were able to cash flow 90% of the story, but then we got to the end and all of the final bills came due at the end. And it's like, okay, it's time to press that public funding option. And I was really worried about how it would go. And it's been a fascinating 10 days or so, because at first we just put out kind of to the email list, hey, we need just that last 10%. If you've enjoyed this stuff, if you want to support us, here's some different tiers, here's some rewards. And then we put out a video on the Modern Rogue channel, which got a little bit more attention. We're looking at it now for the video watchers, that sort of emphasized primarily just how much we've been able to accomplish over the last year, and then reminded people like, this last 10%, boy, we could really use some help. And then it was astonishing because we got halfway to our funding goal in the first 5 or 6 days, which is remarkable. These are all people who, with very little expectation of a reward for themselves, are like, yeah, I want to see you keep on trying and going harder and farther. And at which point we said, we sent out a new email saying, whoa, this is remarkable. People have suggested that we come up with more tiers. So we came up with middle tiers, like at $100, you could get an individually numbered challenge coin that you could flash. The biggest thing was coming up with a name for what we're doing, because we said, oh, we're trying to complete phase 1 of construction, which there's no poetry to that. Nobody is clamoring to be a member of that club. But instead we realized, oh wait, no, this is remarkable. This is a founders club. This is the beginning of something, and there's only going to be one group of people who are there at the beginning. And so we also added like a $250 tier where you could get your name on a brass plate on one of 50 trees up at the front of the property, so that when you do visit, you could come visit your tree. And then we got to the last phase, which strangely has been the most successful. Yesterday, we put out an email and a video saying, okay, we are 98% complete. What say we commemorate all this with a big old brass plate that all of our names are going to go on. So now, if you want your name on this brass plate that's going to live here at the property forever, then you, just as holding
Get
a piece
on in.
Yeah, exactly. Just as we're sending you a piece of the property, this is a piece of you that gets to live on our property. And it's remarkable because that's been the biggest response yet. And I didn't intend for us to do it this way, but I think it ended up being a smart strategy, because we started focused on our mission and what we needed. And then each successive button push has increasingly been about the tangible benefits to the people at home, appealing to, actual physical, having a coin or having your name on the property or all that stuff. So it seems to have worked really well. And as of today, literally today, we finally have breathing room, and there's not any big, scary, looming financial dragons. And as a result, this week, we're going to start moving into the new production facility and building everything out.
So here's a question, just because I don't know if we've talked about it. You've mentioned that we're 98% to the goal funding rule right now.
That's what the email yesterday said, and then the last 24 hours happened.
Gotcha.
So we're kind of funded at this point.
But like comparing this to like a very traditional like Kickstarter, right? You would have a very public goal number and amount and time. So when does this wrap up, or what's the next part of this?
That's that's a really good question. So at this point, and obviously all of this is going, I mean, there's still so much more that needs to be done, right? Everything goes to construction of building out the stuff, because now that we're actually able to functionally move in there, there's no shortage of things that desperately need to be fixed and built. So, and also, like in one reality, we could just right now say, well, we're funded, thanks, bye, peace out. But I feel like we would be doing a disservice to all of our fans who were like, well, I wanted to be part of that. I wanted my name on a plaque or whatever. I wanted to be part of
no
the
one's
Secret
suggesting
Club.
that.
Well,
but we don't have, like right now, there's no deadline date on anything that's gone out yet.
Exactly. So that's the question that we have to wrestle with, is like, what does the greatest service to the greatest number of people? Because obviously, if all you cared about was money, then you would just perpetually, constantly be taking money forever and ever and ever. But we're not interested in that. But so it feels like what we want to do is creep up on a deadline and give lots of warning for, it's like, okay, this is when we're going to shut it down. And that's going to be it. That's going to be the Founders Club. Because we're right at just shy of 500 members of the Founders Club now. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be a big brass plate with a lot of names on it. And I know there's a lot of names. Like on Friday, I was at Wizard Academy and I mentioned something about it. And there was a couple of fans who were like, wait, what is this? You're doing a thing? And for whatever reason, they just didn't see it. So I feel weirdly obligated to keep the door open long enough for everybody who wants to be in to get in.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that you are at the point now where even if you say, hey, at the end of the month, right, or by October some date, like that, this is going to end. I think this is about the point where you set a runway that now creates urgency, but also just ties up the like, hey, guess what? We won. So now, if you just want to be part of the victory party, you have X amount of time to register.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the weird things is, obviously, this whole thing was born out of a timing issue and a bunch of bills coming due at the same time. But now that we have breathing room financially, now all of a sudden there's a new obligation that I feel, which is everybody who wants to be part of where we're at right now. Mm-hmm. It's my obligation to make them, to give them the opportunity to be part of it.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to ballpark, I mean, I
would say,
are we talking weeks? Are we talking days?
Yeah. Oh, weeks. I would say certainly 1 week going forward. And then over the next couple of weeks, it's mainly a celebration of Holy Cow we're funded. And by the way, if you want to be part of this, this tribe, this collective, then you have the opportunity. So I would say maybe another week or 2 weeks, 2 weeks top. But
I would say, I mean, functionally, really, if we're really going to open the kimono on this, you need to wrap this up before you start another sales campaign.
Correct.
Right?
And that's the big thing. I either get to be saying, hey, who wants to give me free money and be part of a club? Or I get to say, who wants to buy the new deck of cards and cool puzzle box?
But it can't be Monday and Tuesday that those two things happen.
Exactly. So
one needs to be wrapped up as loudly as possible, where everybody's happy and we all saying yub nub. Yep. And then there's a little buffer, and then
especially if there's the ideal version of this would be that I think an ideal version of this would be that the fundraising would end. All of the people who got all of the fundraising stuff got finished before Black Friday. So going into Black Friday, there's all this goodwill. Now, I know probably a lot of this stuff is not totally feasible before that time.
I think it might be Black Friday. We got some time. So let's say we wrap it up generously. Let's say 2 weeks from now, and everything's done. That gives me a good 6 weeks, because what I want to do is, I mean, if I could, I would write individual emails to every single person expressing just how important what they did is. But at the very least, like for anybody whose name's on a tree, I want to send them a photo of their tree, and certainly we
have to send all the pieces,
all of the pieces of the property.
Got to make and send all the coins.
Exactly, and plus
here.
also if what I don't want to have happen is, because at the $500 tier, the benefit is a grab bag of some fun stuff from the store. And so I want to make sure that's in their hands by the time we get to Black Friday, so they know, okay, this is what I got from the store. This is what I still want from the store, or whatever. But I think we can make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything too crazy. I mean, the brass plate might be a bigger.
That's later, though. I mean, like, you
but...
don't really need to be on the hook for that until you have any kind of big event.
But at the very least, I can walk
needs
around with an iPhone and take a picture of, like, hey man, I picked out this tree for you. I hope you like it.
Sure.
And then take a picture of the tree.
For the tree people, yeah. I mean, you can be in communication and give them the endorphin rush on, like, hey, look, this is a cool thing.
Yeah.
So I've been looking through kind of the narrative that I see on scam stuff, you know, like the different, and it's interesting because you're using that as the site to sort of find the information out about it. And I'm wondering, like, do you want, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, like, I was just trying to process this as far as figuring out, like, do you want to build like a dedicated site or just a section there that is like because you talked before about the idea of a narrative and the story behind something. And I'm wondering, like, you know, there's Wizard Academy has this, and I'm thinking, do you want like a dedicated blank that's, because it's part of everything, but it is its own enterprise unto itself now.
Well, and so if I'm following you correctly, the question is, like, do we want it to be a thing that is its own thing? And that's part of the narrative that we're doing is 90% of everything we were able to cash flow, and we're just at that last 10%. Everybody who's in, as far as I'm concerned, we're all responsible for this place being here, right? So that's why we're having the Founders Club plaque, and that's why, you know, we can put names on trees. But beyond that, that's about as much real estate as I want to put out there. Because, of course, as we continue to grow and develop, there might be a time that it's like, oh, you know what we should have is a whatever studio or an artist collective or a thing. And then that becomes a second project.
Yeah. I'm literally talking about drawing a circle around what this is right now. Like, I was thinking, because I'm looking here, I'm thinking, like, I want to find out more. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I know to go to Scam Stuff, which is your store. And I figure, like, that's going to be where that, because we were talking about how other people, you told other people, oh, this is cool. I want to fund this. And like, and that's the hard part. We realize now is, like, we can talk to people on all these different channels, but if nobody's tuned in, they don't get the message. And I was just thinking too, like, the idea of, is there something to the idea of a web page that is the name of the it connected here, but the name of the compound, it's this? Because the other thing you could then do is that, hey, here's a list of events where if you want to get a ticket to come watch a recording, click here.
Yes, and that is, unfortunately, it's
a hub
just
web page, basically, for the property.
Well, and that is something that we have not cracked the code yet, because depending on what the community silo is, we've called it different things. When we're talking to Weird Things and Night Attack, we refer to the Diamond Club Studios. When we're on Mono Rogue, we call it the Mono Rogue World Headquarters. We haven't really figured out a name for it on Scam Nation, but what we desperately need, which unfortunately nothing but creative energy will yield for us, is some version of, we know that NBC Studios lives inside Rockefeller Center. We need some name like Rockefeller Center for what the place is, and we haven't cracked that yet. And until we crack it, it's hard to create that central hub of a website like you were talking about.
Well, let me try to bridge the gap a little bit, though, because Brian, you are very, very good at understanding the story from the perspective of the people that are participating. So from your perspective, Brian, you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad that all these strangers gave me money at a time where I desperately needed money because I'm building this, right? Like, this was a very needed cash injection from the community, which we've tried to not do, right? Like, you've had sales, but you've never out and out said, please give me money for, you know, me naming a tree after you, stuff like that. But from the people who are coming in and doing its perspective, now it's a little. I know you love the idea of like the Adventurers Club, right? Like at Disney. That now, is there a place where beyond this right now, beyond, oh my God, I get to point my name out on a plaque, that are we our own core, right? Are all the founders now, is there a place to go to even like feel awesome together, or like Andrew pointed out, and maybe this is down the road where you figure out the name for everything, but it's like, are we special? And are we special beyond when this wraps up?
Oh, and that's the promise that I'm making, right? Is that theoretically 5 years from now, when we're all gathered for a rad party at an eclipse. Also, you kind of got me thinking when you mentioned the Adventurers Club. I wonder if like CuriousCompound.com is around.
It sounds like something very different. Curious Compound.
Oh no, that's right.
You're curious? Come on over to the Curious Compound.
Yeah, you're right.
We explore all kinds of curiosity.
Nothing's off limits at the Curious Compound. All right, maybe that's not the best.
I'm sending a link to Bryce, which I think should be your template. I'm sorry.
but
joke.
You're right, because what we're really doing is we're creating, and we would never call it this, because as Justin and I talked about last week on Night Attack, there's the story you present and the story that it really is. What it really is we're trying to create an artist collective, a place for talented individuals to collaborate.
You're not. I'm sorry. You're not. This is a collective, implies there's a bunch of people who own it and decide over it. Nothing ever gets done and it falls apart into decay. And then later on you go run for president, you know. This is your Lucasfilm. This is your Skywalker Ranch. Don't run from that.
Okay.
This is your project, Brian, with a great community of people supporting you. It's you.
That's correct. And you're right. I got to stop using that terminology.
I've always winced every time you say collective, because that's not what it really, I mean, it's a lot of, all of us are working together for this company.
Yeah.
But we don't have other outside groups or outside artists yet. I know that's
correct.
the idea.
No,
but
I
we're
think
not
that's a really good distinction, and I need to exercise better hygiene about not using that terminology. That's good.
We all have these strange relationships with our ego, because we're all egomaniacs, but we're all always going in the back of our head like, hey, settle down, you know, and we're afraid to name things sometimes because we don't want to appear to be this or that. It is, you've got a wonderful community of people that have empowered and made this possible for you. And you're aware of like the fear of, once I piss them off, they go away and everything falls apart. And so you're trying to balance that ground, but you don't need the false humility here. And I don't mean to call you false, but you know, embrace the idea. This is like, you know, when Francis Ford Coppola, you know, the difference between Zoetrope and Skywalker Ranch and Lucasfilm was very different. Coppola was like, I want to do this collective, and we're all going to come together and do this. It fell apart. It fell apart because it needed one person making decisions, one person doing this. Lucas watched what happened to Zoetrope and said, you know, there's a lot of great ideas there, but I'm going to get rid of the problem, the collective part, and I will listen to people and make decisions and do this. It's his baby. And so this is your thing, and you want to make this accessible to everybody.
Nope. I think you're 100% right. And until we come up with an official name, I think TV Zegon in the chat has it right. And I will internally think of it as Scamwalker Ranch until a better name comes along.
I'm going to put Brushwalker Ranch there, you know?
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
that's a good insight.
So look at this idea of the Founders Club as like, because what have you, we started this conversation with like, the problem is I'm talking about the same place in 4 different terms, right? It's Diamond Club Studios, it's Modern Rogue World headquarters, it's the same building, right? And much of the same talent, but we've siloed for brand purposes all these different communities. The Founders Club can be that first nucleus, whether or not, before you even know what the name of the compound is, the Founders Club are people that wherever we came from, we found this community because we wanted this thing to be a reality. And now that's your first kernel of the mixture of everything that you've kind of worked on, regardless of where the brand is.
Yeah, and I mean, just from a physics perspective, that nucleation point matters. Absent a nucleation point, water never turns to ice. You know, you've got to have that one thing that everything forms around.
Yeah, and listen, I think you could come up with a name for the compound, and then you could give the studios a different name if you think the name is stupid, But I think you just put a pin in that soon, because I think that's an important part of the narrative.
Yeah,
and
I totally agree. And if anybody wants to write us, just hit me up, Brian@schwood.com.
Because you could do. Because as part of that narrative is I want this place to have its own narrative now, i.e. a web page that could be, hey, this is what this is about. This is what's going on here. Another place is follow the story on email, whatever. Because also, you've talked about, made very good cases about separation of people and their interest levels and stuff. There's a lot of people who are really, really interested in this, and now creating a channel of, this is my email list for the compound. When we're going to do events with tickets and other stuff, this is the place to go to find out. When we do seminars and stuff, a lot of that's down the road, but this will be the place to find out. And
and also these kind of things, I think we talked about this last week too. They happen very infrequently, right? There is a lot of bias toward, I want to be there when it happened, because when's the next time a thing that I really like builds a structure for itself?
Has a chrysalis moment of all of a sudden it's everything changes. There'll be a before this time and an after this time.
Yeah, and I want to be a part of it. I want to be at the ground floor for something much larger.
And what we have now going on all the time on LA is that we had sort of the rise and fall of the comedy club, and then you had some comedians getting on a podcast, and other comedians oh, nobody's paying you to do that. That's dumb. You're doing a podcast, and then they're watching people Joe Rogan and Adam Carolla all of a sudden turn this into empires, and then every comedian wants a podcast now. Now you're getting people want to buy tickets to go watch live recordings of podcasts, and there are venues for that now. And a lot of times it's a comedy show. It's actually a podcast and stuff. And that is, your venue. You have this venue now that needs to have its gateway to it.
Well, and also Airbnb, right? There's a lot of venue ops that be it visiting hours, recording schedule, when you want strangers there, when you don't want strangers there, when they can rent out a room there. There's definitely something that's going to happen sooner rather than later, that you will need some kind of central op.
Well, and I think it's a source of revenue generation is that if I knew I could go rent this place once a week or something like that for my podcast, for my project or something like that, I would be starting to think about businesses or things I'd want to do around it. Oh, do I want to go podcast from there? Do I want to go do this from there? And I don't know how much that fits into your plans or what you want to do, but it's the Skywalker model,
Yeah.
And
well, and it's just one of those things where I know this much, that overpromising too early is a rough road to hoe. And so I like that we've made small moves so far, and everything feels conservative and responsible and safe. Even the slow unfolding of hey, does anybody want to, donate money, and these are tangible benefits that we're certain that we can bestow upon everybody who participates.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know when I can rent it out to go shoot a horror movie on the grounds.
I mean, just show up.
All right, go for it. If Brian walks over there and sees a camera crew, what happened? Andrew just showed up. And just,
oh no,
hey guys, what's going on?
And bonus, if you get there soon enough, you'll have a befuddled Andrew Heaton being terrified by any and all moves as his bow tie falls off.
C-Spawn points out that the question of compliance standards to me, like ADA, liability insurance, etc. We're this is all private property, and so we have had to change insurance companies to a company that was more comfortable with the idea of us creating content on property. And as a matter of fact, the insurance company that we're going to insures a bunch of country music stars, people who own their own ranch, and produce their own music live on their own property. So even though it's a different flavor, it was good to know that there was an ecosystem that we could plug into. As a matter of fact, today we signed the paperwork on all of that. ADA compliance is that is being worked on. But again, right now everything is private property. This is just our guest house that we make accessory use of a residence for. But of course, we want to see that evolve and get bigger and more interesting over time.
Yeah, it seems like you've thought this through considerably, and
I mean, there's a reason it took over a year. Like we closed on this place a year ago, and there's a lot of people who are like, oh, is this ever going to happen? Is it ever going to go anywhere? It's like MRFers. This stuff takes time. There's a reason for that cliche about everything costing twice as much and taking twice as long.
Yeah, I guess it was about a year ago that we did the Simpsons podcast, right? And
Yeah.
I came down for that because that was right after Dragon Con. I booked my flight right after that and came down to Austin. We did the Simpsons podcast with Gertz and yeah, wow. And it was a hovel then. now it's actually functional.
yeah, on the whole name front, like I do think that, like I said, don't run from it. Don't run for personalization. If you want to make it the B&B Ranch or B&B Studios or whatever, don't feel like everybody's going to be like, we didn't know this was about what you were trying to do, Brian.
Well, it is funny, and I don't want to wallow or bemoan this too much, but I found it very curious that different silos have responded very differently to the solicitation of donations. A lot of our hardcore podcast fans have been nothing but excited about it. Even the Modern Rogue audience was very excited about it. But then just yesterday, we put a version of the video up on the Scam Nation podcast. And keep in mind, Scam Nation skews younger, so I think that's a big part of it. But it was really curious to see the few comments that were like, there was one that was like actively upset that it appeared that we were very successful, and somebody else said, yeah, I'm unsubscribing because it seems like they're wealthy or doing well or whatever.
Almost like people who live at home with their parents and don't have to pay for anything are angry when they find out that things in the world cost.
But we always get that. I mean, we used to do a weekly show about merchandise we were selling in the store, and we always got that. Oh, and they're selling. It's a commercial. It's we always get that in those comments.
I don't charge for anything.
And
but Mom, where's dinner?
But I think the other thing is that Scam Nation has been a blind spot for the story of the property.
Yeah,
I don't. It's never been. I can't. Maybe it's been mentioned, but or maybe it's been in those merchandising videos where it's been talked about. But in general, people I would say, are not exposed to it there.
Yeah, I agree.
And so maybe that's part of it, is in terms of like, oh, you've been doing this for a year. Like I could see that. But also whatever their comments on YouTube, who cares?
Right.
Schwoodcott it is. Done.
I mean, yeah, I would say this. I know, Brian, that your instinct is to hope that the perfect name shows up in the chat and you know it immediately, right? Or you get this awesome email and you're like, oh, this is perfect. But I'm kind of with Andrew. Like, I feel like this is something that you just need to wake up and say, this is my property and this is what I'm naming it. Like, because no matter what, everyone's going to fall in love with it. It doesn't matter what the name is. Everyone's going to rally around it. It just needs a thing. And I do think that it's maybe even a healthy therapeutic thing that you do need to plant your flag in it.
I mean, if you held my feet to the fire right now, I mean, I think I'd lean towards the 7 Acre Schwood. like that is the most fun to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a cute name.
Although Sloth Mark in the chat says, what about Brian Brushwood's Boner Barn?
I think they're going to get a little confused with bonerwars.com. I think there might
that
be some
could
brand
be a
confusion
studio.
on
That could be a studio. went over to Brian Brushwood's boner barn on the 7 Acre Schwood.
You did,
Out
yes.
of
You
town.
did literally build a gigantic warehouse that if the naming rights don't go, then the sitting title would be Brian Brushwood's Boner Bar.
But I.
Oh, the Beat 4 Studios!
Oh no!
You're gonna have the compound itself, the studios themselves, the complex of studios, the individual studios to name. Then you're going to have different buildings that you get to name. You're going to have streets or roads or avenues that you get to name. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to name. You know, when people go to, you know, I went to, you know, there is Disney World, which is then Magic Kingdom,
Right.
and then Epcot, and then Disney Hollywood Studios, and then Animal or whatever. Point is like you have all these. I would say that like if you like 7 Acre Schwood, 7 Acre Schwood, and it's getting to the 7 acres, the 7 whatever. Yes, 7 Schwood.
All right. Well, then I'll cozy up to that unless I hear something better. But I think you're
'Cause
right.
they-
I think
don't-
there's a time element where it's like, ain't no money, and I mean, and plus also we can love it dearly for a year and then figure out the perfect title and then run with that and then you know officially change it.
Because I mean, yeah, like the value of having the perfect title 2 weeks from now probably doesn't outweigh having a good title, you know, in the next 24, 48
that's the thing
hours.
is, Brian, you know that there's a difference between a community, a very active community, having guide rails enough that magic happens.
Right.
And then there's just endless
Just
people.
if something's too open ended, nothing ever gets done.
Yeah. And that's where I think like by Andrew's point, like this is just yours. You just need to you need to know yourself that you own it and you need to name it. And beyond that, like
Separate thing I like
just-
about the name 7 Acre Schwood is that, and this is a non-insignificant part of the story, is that, you know, my wife's name is Brushwood as well. And this is a place where she wants to be able to make art and fire her ceramics and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
it implies more out front ownership on her end as well.
Also, I've heard this, and this is unconfirmed, but I think your children are also named Brushwood. So
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
so, yeah.
Yeah, if there are any two people who are going to tell you, Brian, check your ego.
Instead, there are 3 of you guys saying, no, more ego, go.
Yeah,
This is where you get to put it.
because I know that's that like I don't want to like I know we don't like to use the word fans or this or that or whatever, but just call it what it is. If the narrative is being impeded by your like I don't want to get over it. Do
Yep.
it.
Okay. Nope. That's a really good way to put it, and I'm gonna wrap my head around that. I do have to go pick up my kid from the bus stop, so if we could go to picks.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna go retro with my pick. I took a game that I bought back in 2006 and reloaded it on Steam and started playing it again. DEF CON. Did you guys ever play DEF CON?
Yeah. This is the nuclear war simulator.
Yeah, you guys remember War Games, where he was trying to play a global thermonuclear war. This is that game, and it's got a nihilistic bent to the attitude for it because war is number one inevitable. There's no solution where you achieve peace. 2, everybody fires nukes at each other and everybody dies, but the winner is the one who dies the least. And so, and they lean all the way in, everything from the creepy minor key music the whole time to where they inject, like you hear somebody coughing and you hear a woman wailing at one moment. It's really deeply depressing, but also freaking amazing. It really is the game Global Thermonuclear War, just like you saw on War Games. And I enjoyed it quite a bit.
It's basically like a real-time strategy game, but with Earth. And, you know, you move your ships and your troops around. And
Yeah, so you begin at DEF CON 5, peace, ostensibly, and that's when you get so many resources to put so many things out, and what you want to immediately do is send all your ships to find out where the enemy's stuff is, and then you sort of predict on that, like, okay, I bet you're going to try this kind of things. So at DEFCON 2, you start putting up more of your defenses so that you can have anti-missile defense systems. Then you get to DEFCON 3, and then around, I believe, DEFCON 3 or 4, you get to start having active armed conflicts, but no nukes are on the table until DEFCON 1 happens, and then it's just fire all your nukes, and then hopefully you've set everything up so that you can defend yourself. It's really haunting, and I think it's a wonderful game.
Yeah, I enjoyed it the little bit I played with it, but I feel like I had a little bit of a time with the real time strategy element of it, where it was either too fast or too slow, and and this was this was a long time ago, so maybe fresh eyes would bear out a better strategy.
Even just going through the tutorial, though, I thought was pretty good, because the nice thing when you're against AIs is you get to be the one person deciding to speed stuff up or slow it down.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas when you have other humans, there's always somebody who wants to go slower than everybody else, and you don't get to force them to speed up.
And they may not have had a tutorial when it launched, or I don't know. Yeah, DEFCON. That's a pretty cool game.
Yeah.
I didn't really watch anything or play anything. I was kind of
The Righteous Gemstones, you say? Yes, it was a great episode last night.
That show's still really good. And other than that, I watched football, which was depressing. So no picks.
I got a pick. So I mentioned for my Weird Things pick the health app, and I've been using this Nike Run Club app to track track me on the treadmill, and it's pretty cool. It's kind of a slick looking app. It's free. It has all sorts of they've got music playlists. It integrates with Spotify. They do the guided runs. They'll set up personalized schedules and stuff. I'm not at say running speed right now. I can speed walk like a monster, but I'm not at running yet. My endurance is not up to that, but it doesn't seem to be very judgmental about that. And it's cool. You know, I think it's got all sorts of hooks into the Apple Watch, and if you've got other exercise stuff, but I was just surprised that it was free with all the stuff that it has, because there are other apps out there that are like subscription services, and they do kind of, you know, we'll tailor your thing for you and give you all these audio guided things, but for a free app it seems surprisingly full featured, and it really does look kind of slick, which is a small thing, but I think works nice. So
it's like you're describing stuff like you speed walk like a monster, and I was just thinking about like, yeah, exactly,
coming for you, lady.
Now speed walk. You know,
what do you guys have? You guys have a camera feed now? Come on.
Yeah, it's amazing that this multi-billion-dollar company that sells athletic apparel would offer this thing for free. That remind you of their brand.
And that's part of it is, you know, they've got the buttons on the bottom, and the farthest one is the shop, so you can buy shoes and work on
More
your
stuff.
But Kevin Hart tells you did it when you completed a workout, which is
Weird.
Yeah. Hey, it's Kevin Hart.
Hey, man, are we still hating on Kevin Hart, internet? Are we still wanting to give him the real business?
One of the funniest lines, regardless of what you thought about the new Dave Chappelle special, I think one of the funniest lines in comedy history is that Kevin Hart is the nicest guy I've ever met. Kevin Hart is as close to perfect as I've ever met anybody in my life. In fact, he is precisely 6 tweets short of perfection.
If you're in the habit of sometimes like doing things like getting domain names and getting services and stuff, a company that I've been using a lot, which is kind of you could tell was started by people who are just trying to get things done, and that is DNS Simple. And DNS Simple is great because I pay a little bit more there than I do GoDaddy to register a domain name, but maybe a couple bucks more. But the services are super easy. You have like one click, like get your SSL certificates, one click integration with like things like Heroku and things like this, which probably most people won't care about. But it is a really easy to use system for like if you want to buy domain names and you don't want to have to jump through a lot of hoops and you want to quickly like I built a thing like I'm playing in VR, and the problem with VR is like if you're using a browser, is if you want to connect to let's say between your phone and your headset, and you need to copy paste things, it can be a pain. And so, if you're in VR land, headset land, and you have this physical device somewhere else, and you're not using some sort of desktop streaming thing. So I needed a thing the other day, and I'm like, I need a clipboard. I just need a clipboard that works between my phone and my browser, so I can copy URLs and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. I came up with the idea of a VR clipboard. So I bought vrclipboard.com and was able to put together. It just took me like probably 2 hours to go from the idea to having the thing up and running, in large part because DNS Simple was super easy to buy the domain name, plug it into the server, and get the whole thing running. So DNS Simple is my pick because it's just you build things really, really fast.
Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Because there are a lot of top level domain providers like our friends at domain.com, but when it's built and kind of shaped specifically for developers, it's cool. It's a cool niche. dnsimple.com.
Yeah, DN Simple.
Nice.
Gentlemen, it's been after.
Here we go. Hey everybody, good work today. We'll be back in a little bit with Cord Killers. Justin, what's your next stream coming up? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Yeah, other than that, just working on everything.
Nice.
Balls in the air.
Andrew?
Book. Got a book I gotta write. Gotta write a book. I'm in the middle of working on some VR projects, but like, man, I need to go do that. Hey, what's the domain provider that we use or you guys use to promote?
Oh, we actually don't promote them anymore. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, okay.
They
All right.
are not renewing that contract, is my understanding.
Yeah. So comment says David Chappelle though. Yeah, best comedy special in ever.
My fandom of Dave Chappelle is well known. I think this is a more complex special than I think some of the critics have given it credit for, but I do need to rewatch it before I kind of detail why I think that is. But
I was insulted by parts of it, and I loved it. I'm like,
yeah, I very much enjoyed it, but I don't know if there's much that Dave Chappelle could do that I would not.
Yeah, it's true that. Yeah. But I liked it better than his last one a lot.
I think this is the most he's put into a special.
Yeah,
like,
really.
I think this felt like one that, he did it on Broadway. I think it felt more like there's a lot. It's a cohesive thing and not a bunch of jokes that just worked that kind of fit as a set.
Yeah, but everybody's entitled to their own preferences, and so if you don't like it, it's fine. We can still be friends.
Alrighty, well, and friend or not, come check us out for Cord Killers here in a couple hours. Here on twitch.tv/Night Attack. We're gonna have who do we have on? And I think we have Nicole Lee on again this week. That'll be great. We'll have some more information in the movie draft. Slate has been selected. All of our contestants have confirmed, so we're gonna have the contestants get their slate soon. We'll have a post up on the Diamond Club Reddit soon about that, so people know when and how to play along. And yeah, I think that's gonna keep an eye out for all the stuff.
Yeah, and it looks like it too is definitely going to fall just a little short. Or will it?
Or will it? I don't know. Keep an eye out for the movie draft update and spoiler time. But in the meantime, we got to go get ready for that show. So thank you everybody for watching.
Yeah.
See you later.
Bye.
See you.